may sit down. I do apologise. It's a good start. Obviously forgotten. Right, because they're supposed to do whatever you tell them. Okay, welcome everyone to this evening's full council meeting, and obviously we'll go through the usual. This is a public meeting and members of the public and press are permitted to report on the proceedings. Reporting includes filming, photographing, making an audio recording and providing commentary on proceedings. But please note the meeting is recorded and streamed live. These recordings are published on the relevant meeting of the council's website. By choosing to attend this public meeting, you are deemed to have given your consent to being filmed or recorded and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds, the premises must be evacuated immediately. Do not spend time collecting personal belongings. All emergency escape routes are clearly signed. Once you have left the building, the assembly point is on the High Street opposite the Guildhall. Members and other speakers are reminded to use their microphone when speaking. Thank you. And this evening, I would like to invite the Council to stand and observe 1 minute silence for Rachel Hall, past Mayoress, who passed away on the 5th of August. Thank you. This evening, I would like to welcome a new chaplain for this evening, and it's Dr. Yvonne Stollard. And Yvonne is our Jewish representative on the Worcester SACRE, the Standing Advisory Council on Religious Education. And I would like to invite Yvonne to say a few words and a few prayers for us. Thank you.
Good evening. Before I start, I'd just like to say that I'm not a rabbi. I'm just a member and vice president of Birmingham Progressive Synagogue. I've been involved with interfaith dialogue for over 30 years and until recently was chair of Worcestershire Interfaith Forum. I'm currently a member of the Birmingham Faith Leaders Group. Jewish texts are beyond vast, so to choose something appropriate for this occasion is no mean task. And with only a few minutes available, I thought it would be apt to base it on the Jewish principle of tikkun olam. This means fixing the world. Basically, beautiful though our world is, it is not a perfect place. Apart from natural disasters, there are human-made ones too, and it is our duty to fix it. Pirkei Avot, often translated as the Ethics of the Fathers, is a compilation of the ethical teachings from rabbinical Jewish tradition and is found in the Mishnah, a text written down in the 2nd century of the Common Era. It forms part of the Talmud. Chapter 2, verse 16 of Pirkei Avot speaks about tikkun olam and the endless task of repairing the world. Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor, v'lo atar ben horim lehib atil mimena. It is not incumbent upon you to finish the task, but neither are you free to absolve yourself from it? In other words, it's not one person's job to fix the whole world, but everyone is supposed to contribute to the work of fixing it. So here you are, doing your bit to make a tiny corner of the world a better place, namely the city of Worcester. Here are a couple of relevant prayers from the Liberal Judaism prayer book. You'll be pleased to know they are in English. A prayer about leadership. We pray for all who exercise leadership in our community and spend themselves in the service of others, those who hold high office and those who volunteer for humbler tasks that are no less essential. May God grant them wisdom and understanding and a high consciousness of their responsibility, combined with humility and a sense of proportion and humour. May the work they do seem to them an honour rather than a burden, and give them joy and satisfaction. Through their leadership and service, may this community grow in strength and vigour, harmony and happiness, and make its contribution to the well-being of society. And for you, a prayer before a meeting. Eternal God, let us feel your presence even when we deal with mundane matters. May the aims we set ourselves and the means we choose to implement them accord with your will. Make us conscious of our responsibility as leaders of our community by the example we set and the policies we adopt. May we help each other to work for the welfare of society. Grant us the wisdom to build on past achievements, the humility to learn from past mistakes, the courage to think new thoughts and to consider new ideas. May we listen to each other with respect and judge each other with charity, and may our controversies be only for your sake. Guide us with wise counsel and establish the work of our hands. Amen.
Dr. Yvonne Stollard, thank you very much, and feel free to leave at any appropriate point. Not, you don't need to stay all evening. Thank you. So do we have any apologies for absence?
Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Disara.
No further? Okay, thank you. And do we have any declarations of interest for this evening? Councillor Norfolk.
Thank you, Mayor. Agenda item 8.2. I am a director of bid and following discussion with the monitoring officer must withdraw from the chamber when this item is being discussed.
Thank you. And Councillor Mays.
Yeah, my wife is employed by a member of BID and on agenda point 8.3 Shrub Hill Quarter SPD. An employee I manage at work owns the West Midlands Tavern, which is listed in the SPD as a heritage asset.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, can I add that officers who are identified in the returning officer report will also withdraw from the chamber for that item.
Thank you. And Councillor Agar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the matter of the motion regarding WASPI women, some of us are of that generation, and I wondered if we needed to declare an interest.
Through you, Sean. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I'm grateful for the question. On the basis of what I understand the motion to be, I don't consider that you have an interest that would require you to withdraw from the room.
Thank you. Any further? Okay, thank you. And if we can now go to the minutes, and are we all happy to agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of July are to an accurate record? Thank you. And any matters arising? Thank you. I should move on to Mayor's communications, and I would like to pay tribute to Rachel Hall. Rachel Hall, who sadly passed away on the 5th of August 2024 at the age of 61, was well known to members of the Council, having served as Mayoress to Adrian Gregson in 2022 to 23. Rachel was well known as a talented artist and was also a wine expert. Born in Board Heath, she attended Henwick Grove School, St Mary's Convent and Worcester Technical College before working for a time in London. On returning to Worcester, Rachel worked for Odd Bins in the Corn Market for nearly 20 years and also Bottles in New Street. Rachel had proposed to Adrian on 29th of February this year, and her funeral on 21st of August was a celebration of her life on what would have been their wedding day. On behalf of Adrian, I would like to thank members and officers for their kindness and support given to Adrian over the last few weeks. And on behalf of the Council, I would like to give our very best wishes to Adrian and let him know he is in our thoughts. And I would like to now invite group leaders to speak if they wish to.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Madam Mayor. Rachel brought colour and love into every life that she touched. It's so sad that she's been taken from us too soon. She had been unwell for some time, but she bore her treatment with such fortitude that most people didn't realise just how poorly she was. She wasn't able to do all she would have liked as Mayoress alongside Mayor Gregson, but she brought to the role her love of art and culture and colour and her encyclopedic knowledge of wines. There was plenty of opportunity to taste and judge and discuss the wines served at different events and as to which vintages were superior or inferior. Rachel was part of every Worcester Labour Party event and social as far back as I can remember. Her artwork and flower paintings brought colour and joy to many. She was unassuming in her artistic talents, even though everyone else was in awe of the beauty of what she created. How many of us have bought her paintings and sent or received special messages written on her cards? Most of all, Rachel brought colour and love into the life of our colleague Adrian. Rachel was the safe haven from the storms of political life. Rachel's passing leaves a unique gap in Worcester life. Let's treasure the happy memories and the privilege of spending time with her and for brightening up our lives. May she rest in peace.
Councillor Denham, thank you. And Councillor Stephen, thank you.
I didn't know Rachel very well, but my wife Katie and I met both Adrian and Rachel quite a few times when we were deputy mayor and they were being the mayor of Worcester, the mayoress. And Rachel was always very kind and generous to us, as was Adrian, as we were the understudies for them in their mayoral year. I remember once they invited us to have a glass of wine with them in the mayor's parlour, and although we were in different political parties, they made us feel very welcome, and they certainly calmed our nerves down to quite a degree. They were always very helpful and were full of advice for us into our new roles as well. So I thank Rachel for that. I know Rachel will be missed by very many people, and I know that for a fact because when I went to the funeral, it genuinely was standing room only. The room was packed. She had so many friends and family and well-wishers that the room was absolutely heaving. Neil Lawrenson said to me the day after I went along to the funeral, I said, well, I didn't see you there. He said, well, there were just so many people there, we couldn't possibly have seen each other in the room. Finally, I'd just like to say thank you to Adrian and Rachel for everything they've done for the city. particularly Rachel for her love of wine, for her art, and everything she's done for Worcester. Thank you.
Councillor Stephen, thank you, and Councillor Holmes, thank you.
Thank you. I only met Rachel a couple of times, and I was immediately struck by how much she illuminated the room. I met her as the Lady Mayoress, and her warm smile and her personality, she just seemed to fill the whole of the Guildhall with welcome. And I was so amazed at how she seemed to stand there and just greet everybody. And I felt that a few times it's just definitely not been enough to encompass such a wonderful, warm person. So, and I knew she was artistic because I saw some of her paintings and I was marvelling at them. And I can only say so much condolences to you, Adrian, at this time.
Councillor Holmes, thank you. Thank you. Do we have any further speakers? Okay. Thank you all. I shall move on to, we've got the 80th, well, we did have the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Vernon, and I was fortunate enough to go as mayor, and I went with the Twinning Association. 4 members came, and 2 veterans and their wives came along as well, and we were in France for 4 days, and we were looked after superbly by the Twinning Association. I'd like to say a huge thank you to them. And to everyone who hosted in France. And we had a day where we went to visit a chateau and we went to see Monet's gardens, which we were really fortunate to do. It was a real privilege. And then the following day, we had the commemoration of the battle. But we actually went to 5 different locations around Vernon. They're all these sort of key points. So I managed a speech in French. Probably not my finest moment, but I think they appreciated my best efforts. And with Rosemary for the Twinning Association, we laid wreaths at a couple of areas, and we probably spent about 3/4 of a day there, and there was a service at the end. And I think just a huge thank you to the French as well, that they did it very well. It's slightly different to our service, but it was a real privilege to go, and a huge thank you to everyone involved. So that was that. And now, I think turning to events that we have coming up, we've got Nunnery Wood High School who are actually coming here on Thursday, and we have 300 children split into 3 groups coming to visit the Guildhall, and we're going to give them a little bit of a talk on democracy and why it's so important, and one of our kind officers is going to do a quiz, and also they're going to have a tour of the Guildhall. So I think it will be quite a busy turnaround, but it's just a real opportunity for children to come out and sort of, these days, I know a lot of children can't always afford to go on school trips and that sort of thing, and so Nunnery Wood are looking to facilitate this, and they're doing other things in the city as well, to go and see the fish pass and various things. So, yeah, so we've got that. And then moving on, obviously we've got the inaugural banquet, and that's on the 27th of September. And thank you to everyone who has accepted the invitation, and look forward to seeing you on the evening. And then, gosh, following on from that, we've got the annual Civic Society lecture, which is on Wednesday, the 16th of October. And this year we've got James Staunton, and he's a renowned arts historian and prolific author, and he will be in attendance. And obviously everyone's invited to attend. Also following on from that, we're hosting our 2nd Black History Month in the Guildhall, and that's on the 5th of October, and all welcome. And finally, after this evening, refreshments. Again, you're all invited to join me for refreshments, which will be served in the Mayor's Parlour. Thank you. So if we move on to agenda item 5, we've got public participation, and I believe we have 2 speakers this evening. Just one speaker this evening now. And you'll be given 5 minutes to speak, and Claire will organise the time and give you a signal when it's getting close. So, thank you. And it's Claire, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, and Claire's going to speak about the winter fuel allowance and not being able to apply for pension credit. Thank you, Claire.
Good evening, everybody. It is on. Yes, it's on. I'm here before you as someone who, like many others, is being left behind by a system that is meant to support its most vulnerable citizens. This evening, I'd like to highlight an issue that is not only affecting me personally, but also millions of pensioners across the country. I am currently receiving a small state pension, but due to the fact that my partner is not of pensionable age, I am unable to claim pension credit. This exclusion means that I am also unable to access the winter fuel payment, a vital source of support during the harshest months of the year. Additionally, due to health reasons, my partner is unable to work or claim universal credit, leaving us in a particularly precarious position. This gap in the system is affecting thousands of pensioners like myself, people who are being punished simply because their partner is younger than their partners. This has profound and worrying consequences as we face rising living costs, particularly for essentials such as heating and electricity. Many of us are left struggling to afford basic necessities. The corollary of this is increased poverty, heightened distress, and most troubling of all, the potential of our health to suffer due to inadequate heating during the winter. Many pensioners who could apply for pension credit are put off by the 22-page form with 243 questions, especially those who might not be confident with writing or filling in forms, and also won't know that there are specific words that if you use, you're more likely to be given the benefit. So what can be done? First, I urge this council to actively support initiatives that protect pensioners from falling into fuel poverty. This could include lobbying the government to reconsider the eligibility criteria for the winter fuel payment, particularly for mixed-age couples who are unfairly excluded. Second, I ask that the council explore local support schemes for pensioners who are struggling, whether through grants, subsidies, or partnerships with local organisations that can provide practical help during the winter months and make sure the pensioners know about them. Third, I call on the council to amplify our voices, to make our stories heard. The more people that understand the real-world consequences of these policy decisions, the harder it becomes for those in power to ignore them. In closing, I'm here not just for myself, but for the many pensioners who are facing a winter of worry and hardship. We need support, and we need it now. The council has the power to advocate for us, to push for changes that ensure no one in our community is left behind. I urge you to be our advocates in this fight, to stand with us, and to help bring about the change that is so desperately needed. Thank you for your time.
Claire, thank you. And I will ensure you do receive a written response, and you're more than welcome to stay for the remainder or go as to suit, and you're welcome. Okay, thank you. Okay, next we're going to move on to questions, and the first question is from Councillor Cross to Councillor Udo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor, I am concerned about the non-compliance of licensed taxi drivers and private hire vehicle, licensed taxi drivers who are overranking on Foregate Street. Please, would the Chair of Licensing confirm what action is being taken to ensure that drivers wait only in the designated ranks? Thank you.
Councillor Udo, thank you.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Councillor Cross, for the question. I am aware of the situation and the problems which have been occurring. I think it's safe to say that not all the problems are caused by taxi drivers, and not all taxi drivers are causing the problems. There is a tiny minority who continue to ignore the rules. Frustratingly, the Council are aware of the issues of overranking and they continue to exist despite a wide range of measures and action being taken to control the situation. Having said that, loading and unloading is permissible at this site. Officers from Worcester Regulatory Services and the Council's own parking and enforcement team undertake regular city centre patrols, particularly targeting Foregate Street. In addition, several times throughout the year, targeted late night and early morning enforcement also takes place. The parking enforcement team have a nominated taxi liaison lead who works directly with Regulatory Services team to deal with taxi-related matters. This past weekend, 7 vehicles and drivers were reported for overranking, whilst 1 penalty charge notice was issued to a taxi driver for parking in a disabled bay. The Council have in place a Hackney Carriage and Private Hire penalty points system. Under the scheme, penalty points can be issued by Worcester Regulatory Services to Hackney Carriage and Private Hire drivers for minor offences. If a licence holder accumulates 15 points in a 2-year period, they are referred to the licensing subcommittee for a review to assess whether they remain a fit and proper person to hold a licence with the Council. Overranking attracts 4 penalty points and is the most common reason for penalty points to be issued. There are currently 105 live incidents of penalty points having been issued to licence holders by officers. 2 overranking matters will be heard by the licensing subcommittee in September. The Vice Chair and I have already requested a report to a future committee on enforcement of all licensing issues so we can consider how we can be more proactive.
Councillor Udall, thank you. Councillor Cross, do you have a supplementary?
I do, a quick one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your reply. Look forward to that report. And would you agree to our licensing committee developing and implementing sufficient metrics and regular reporting to enable a performance record of licensing issues such as overranking to be kept and provided? Thank you.
I think that will be an issue for the Licensing and Environmental Health Committee to discuss when it receives the report. I'm open to all ideas. Clearly, we have to tackle this issue, and currently the problem continues. But we will do all that we can to actually establish an opportunity to reduce the problem at Foregate Street and to tackle those people who are causing indiscriminate issues for others.
Thank you both. Okay, if we move on to question 2, we've got a question from Councillor Norfolk for Councillor Lewin as Chair of Planning Committee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are some car showrooms on the Bromyard Road where planning conditions have been placed constraining them to only load and unload deliveries within their property boundaries. Frequently, however, delivery lorries to the showroom have been parking on the Bromyard Road despite strictly no delivery notices, and then delivering to the car showrooms, often with showroom staff standing by and watching. I have been informed that rather than being a planning enforcement issue, it is a parking enforcement concern. Why is this?
Thank you, Councillor Norfolk, for your question. I understand your concern, especially if transporters are idling and impacting local air quality. Just referring back to the previous question. I want to take this opportunity to remind members the email address for planning inquiries is planning@worcester.gov.uk. It will always be forwarded to the right person or team member, and that's the most efficient way to get queries answered. The Council's planning enforcement team has investigated complaints regarding 1 car dealership on Bromyard Road, which concluded in May this year. No breach of planning control was identified as the relevant planning permission for the site was under investigation, did not include any conditions controlling the location for the unloading or loading of vehicles. Therefore, it was referred to the parking and enforcement team as the issues related to transporter vehicles parking on double yellow lines. These lines along this section include a no loading ban between the hours of 8 and 6:30 p.m, Monday to Saturday. Therefore, if a vehicle transporter is parked in one of these double yellow locations outside of these times, there is no action that the Council can take. The parking and enforcement team do undertake visits to this area and have, in the last 6 months, issued 1 penalty charge notice. Information from the team, however, is that for much of the time, transporter vehicles are arriving and leaving outside of these times. If there is any further information a councillor or member of the public has in connection with a particular car dealership and concerns around non-compliance with planning conditions, please submit them to the email address that I just said. If, however, these are concerns with the loading ban element of double yellow lines, these will need to go to the parking and enforcement team. Thank you. I hope that helps.
Councillor Lewin, thank you. Councillor Norfolk, do you have a supplementary?
I don't know. I've been given a different story, so perhaps we'll take it offline and discuss later, if that's all right with everybody.
Thank you. Okay, if we move on to question 3, we have a question from Councillor Mace, and it's to Councillor Lynn Denham as Leader of the Council.
Yeah, thank you very much. So approximately how many pensioners are there in Worcester who are eligible for pension credit but are not currently claiming it and will be affected by the Labour government's decision to restrict winter fuel payments to only those claiming pension credits?
Thank you for the question. It's not possible to determine the number of people who are eligible for pensions credit, as the criteria relies on individual personal information. That's no doubt why the complexity of filling in the form, because there is a lot of information required. So it depends on the level of income from pensions and other sources, as to whether the individual is single or has a partner, whether they have a disability, whether they are a carer, whether they have additional housing costs, what benefits, if any, they receive, whether they have a deferred pension, and of course, depending on the level of savings and or investments.
Councillor Denham, thank you. And Councillor Mace, do you have a supplementary?
I do, thank you. Thank you for the answer. My supplementary would be, would the Leader agree with me that it is vital that the City Council publicise its list of warm hubs in Worcester, far and wide, so that pensioners who can't stay warm in their own homes at least know that they have somewhere warm to go?
Thank you. I mean, I think there has been, and there no doubt will be, some publicity around warm hubs. My understanding is that experience from previous winters actually is a relatively low uptake just for advertising a warm hub. It's in community spaces where there are events, activities and something else going on, have much better involvement and audience. That's not quite the right word, but you know what I mean. Just a warm hub without other activities, I think experience to date has been not many people make use of that opportunity, but we can advertise.
Councillor Denham, thank you. And if we move on to question 4, and it's a question from Councillor Amos, and it's for Councillor Lynn Denham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Given the concern of a number of members of the Communities Committee at its meeting on the 24th of July, that a report from the Home Office about asylum seeker accommodation was put into part 2 of the agenda, thereby deliberately preventing the people of Worcester from knowing about what is going on in their city on a matter of considerable public concern and interest. So will she ask our Member of Parliament to inform the Home Office of this Council's policy on openness and transparency, and remind them of the possible very serious consequences when misinformation based on incorrect rumour is disseminated to the public?
Thank you for the question. I'm sure that the Home Office is very acutely aware of the risks and serious consequences of misinformation based on incorrect rumour, and the recent very serious incidents in parts of the country absolutely reflect that. The report that was presented to Communities Committee on the 24th of July regarding asylum seeker full dispersed accommodation was necessary due to information that the Council had received from the Home Office. and which the chair and vice chair of the committee, in consultation with officers, felt was important for the committee to be informed of and debated. That information was provided by the Home Office as classified by them as confidential, and the report was therefore exempted in line with the Council's constitution.
Councillor Denham, thank you. Councillor Amos, you have a supplementary.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I thank the Leader of the Council for her answer. Given the acute shortage of affordable housing in the city and the acute shortage of properties to rent in the private sector, would she not agree with me that housing hundreds more asylum seekers when there are already some 4,000 people on the housing waiting list in Worcester is both completely irresponsible and will prevent locals being able to obtain private rented accommodation when they are up against the Home Office with an unlimited budget pushing up house prices?
I think there's a number of assertions in there that I am not in a place to factually check, and I think there might well be misinformation within what you have said. The new government has inherited many problems, and the numbers of individuals, numbers of asylum seekers whose case has not been reviewed and has not been processed is but one of the many problems. Lack of housing, lack of affordable housing is also a major issue. The government will be doing what they can to address those as soon as they are able.
Councillor Denham, thank you. And if we move on to question 5, it's a question from Councillor Murray and it's for Councillor Lynn Denham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a year since I tabled the white ribbon motion. This motion called for several key actions, including encouraging all councillors to take the white ribbon pledge, working towards white ribbon accreditation, marking White Ribbon Day on the 25th of November and producing a transphobia hate crime awareness plan with our partners in the LGBTQ community and Stop Hate UK. Could the Council please provide an update on the progress made towards fulfilling these resolutions, particularly around White Ribbon accreditation and the development of a transphobia awareness plan?
Thank you. The Council will be marking White Ribbon Day this year in the Guildhall on the 25th of November. We are applying for White Ribbon accreditation and will work through the extensive action plan, which is a requirement of the White Ribbon UK campaign. We will develop our own transgender awareness campaign. Both of these initiatives will build on the excellent work that the Council has already led in the city through the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Strategy. This includes last year's Speak Up campaign, which invited conversations between community groups and organisations about discriminatory language and actions. The work programme will be steered by the Council's Member Champion for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion and also the Member Champion for Personal Safety and Civility, which may be yourself.
Councillor Denham, thank you. Councillor Murray, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you. That all sounds very positive. Yes, I will be taking part in that steering group, having recently been asked. White Ribbon Day is on the 25th of November, so with the positivity that you've just expressed, can we commit to promoting this campaign every year and ensure that we continue to raise awareness around men's violence against women and girls and the need for men to be a part of the solution as active allies? One thing I've recently done is to register as a champion for the White Ribbon campaign, which is easily done online, women become champions and men can become ambassadors. It would be great if all members were encouraged to do this, which would be in line with the motion that we agreed last year. Thank you.
Okay, there's quite a lot of a speech there. I mean, in all the time I think that I have been a councillor since 2012, we have marked White Ribbon Day every year. And I hope we continue to do. It's a really important initiative to raise awareness, and as in my previous answer, we're looking to expand our involvement with that within our available resources and priorities.
Thank you. And if we can move on to question 6, and it's a question from Councillor Cross, and it's to Councillor Lindenham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In 2006, Worcester was declared a fair trade city, and in 2016, the 10th anniversary of this commitment was celebrated. This month, the Fair Trade Foundation celebrates its 30th anniversary, and we are currently in Fair Trade Fortnight. Please could you confirm whether Worcester is still committed to fair trade, and if so, how this is demonstrated through our policies and practice here in Worcester?
Thank you for the question. I've been a very long-term fan of fair trade personally, and committed to fair trade. And in fact, the 10th anniversary of the commitment in 2016 was the year that my husband was mayor, and I recall being part of events and celebrations. I think the wording of your question, I don't know whether Worcester, as a place, is still committed to fair trade. I'm not up to speed with the local organisation, the local group. Worcester City Council is absolutely still committed to fair trade. The council currently sources fair trade products in its hospitality operations in the Guildhall, and the operator in both the city museums is similarly committed to fair trade products. A list of fair trade suppliers in Worcester is shared on the council's website. Several other city organisations have also publicised their commitment to fair trade.
Councillor Denham, thank you. And Councillor Cross, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. No, I appreciate the distinction between city and the city and the City Council. As a newly appointed member of the Worcester Trade Justice Network, I'm trying to find out where we're at. So thank you for your help.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. And if we can move on to question 7, we've got a question from Councillor Holmes, and it's a question for Zoe Cookson. Thank you. Councillor Cookson, I should say.
Thank you, Mayor. Zoe, can the Chair of Environment Committee provide an update on the motion passed regarding artificial astroturf infill, especially in relation to identifying the current best practices and affordability alternatives in preparation for replacing the astroturf at Purdswell once the pitch reaches the end of its life?
Thank you very much for your question. The motion was passed at the 9th of July meeting, and you'll be pleased to know that the report is coming to Environment Committee on the 5th of November. In line with the motion, that will consider best practice and affordable alternatives to AstroTurf. And I think given the composition of our Environment Committee and the political makeup of those members, I think it's going to be an interesting debate, and I would anticipate it's something that would come back as things are going to change and evolve over time, and we want to make sure that we are always abreast of the latest developments. I'm fully expecting those to be covered in the report. I know that officers have made some members aware of some recent developments in Sheffield, and I'm keen to make sure that all members are aware of those going forward. And in terms of PERT as well, I know they're doing a sinking fund in terms of looking at the future, and it's really nice that this motion that was passed means that will always come back to Environment Committee for those discussions, and I think it's something that we're going to need to get up to date on, but also have a watching brief, because I think there's potentially, I think they've told me, a 10 years of life of PERT as well, and I would anticipate things will change over that. So it's very much something that we as Environment Committee need to keep a watching brief on.
Councillor Cookson, thank you. Councillor Holmes, do you have a supplementary?
Well, I did, but it was to mention Sheffield, which apparently the Environment Committee is already aware of, and we'll know more. And I'm very pleased to hear it's coming back, because it seemed a little disjointed that something was passed through one important committee and it had an impact on another's business, and it didn't get aired there.
Okay. Councillor Holmes, thank you. And we have a further question. It's our final question from Councillor Holmes, and again it's to Councillor Cookson. Thank you.
Well, I had to change it to Councillor Riaz, but I can leave it back. I have received a number of complaints about the reliability of the Gulliver Park splash pad, which has been out of action on a number of occasions this year. The splash pad is one of the few free-to-use wet facilities for parents with young children, and it is disappointing to hear reports that it is closed for repair on a lovely sunny day. As Chair of the Environment Committee, can you confirm that the City Council is committed to resolving the reliability issues as soon as practical, ready for next spring?
I think we're all disappointed about the reliability of the splash pad. You only have to look on Facebook to know the level of discontent that's generated, and also the dissatisfaction with the City Council. So absolutely, I think it's something that we do need to be addressing. Officers have commenced a review of options to see what can be put in place in terms of a reliable and effective splash pad offering for 2025. The council officers have been speaking to other councils who have similar or related services, and they think there are alternatives in terms of the way that splash pads operate that have designs that are on a much simpler basis without the needs for pumps and filtration, and it's really those pumps and filtrations that have created some of the problems. So they tell me they're going to be looking at what's practical and so we can understand the realistic timescales for procuring and installing a new splash pad, and also the cost implications. The Vice Chair and myself of Environment will be looking to make sure that does come to Environment Committee in plenty of time before the February budget setting, should there be cost implications. I know there's been a bit of confusion about where this issue sits, but I think the fact that it got raised at the last Environment Committee seems to be that we therefore have inherited the discussions, and we'll be looking at the way it goes forward in our parks.
Councillor Cookson, thank you. Councillor Holmes, do you have a supplementary?
I need to thank you on behalf of the parents of the city.
Okay. Thank you all, and that concludes questions. So if we move on to notices of motion, and the first motion is being proposed by Councillor Lewin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. This motion is about the Council potentially joining the UK 100. And it's in the context of us declaring a climate and biodiversity emergency and our commitment to work to become a city that's carbon neutral by 2030. We know how hard this target actually is, and what we actually need is the right coordination and partnership working both locally and nationally to achieve it. And the advantage of the UK 100 is that it's the only network for UK locally elected leaders who have pledged to play their parts in this global effort to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. By bringing local authorities from cities and the countryside to share knowledge and collaborate with their collective power, to work closely with elected representatives and policy experts to develop solutions to the challenges that we as local members and leaders face, and to build public support for the transition. It costs nothing to join the UK 100, but it's extremely likely to reap rewards of shared experience, knowledge and support, and build and help us build a network across the UK to work with each other, to move quickly and effectively, to help us monitor our progress, adapt as new technologies come forward. There are currently 113 local authorities who've joined the UK 100, but Worcester is not represented. And so this motion looks to, the proposal is that this proposal will come to Environment Committee for consideration to explore the process involved in proceeding with the application. Thank you.
Councillor Lewin, thank you. And I believe it's been seconded by Councillor Cookson.
as Chair of the Environment Committee, I'm not going to say a lot more about it because I think Karen has advocated very clearly and succinctly the potential benefits of this. It isn't something we know a great deal about, but actually that's why we're referring it to Environment Committee, so we can follow the due process and do that more depth work. We do, as a City Council, have set ourselves some really ambitious targets, and any support that we can get for those targets, I think we really need to embrace. I've recently joined the Waste Strategy Management Board, and the thing that really surprised me was how our targets are much more ambitious than some of our fellow local authorities. So I think we need to continue to drive forward and be the council in the local area with the most ambitious targets, and I think this has the potential to really help us do that. So I would urge all members to support this motion.
Councillor Cookson, thank you. And would anyone like to speak on the motion? Councillor Holmes.
I'm a member of the Green Liberal Democrats, and the Green Liberal Democrats are an environmental activist group within the Liberal Democrats, whose chair was a certain Ed Davey. Many Liberal Democrat councils and councillors support the UK 100 network and are very active members. My group and I are pleased to support this motion for greater cross-party cooperation to effect real change towards achieving net zero. Thank you for bringing it.
Councillor Holmes, thank you. And would anyone else like to speak? No? Okay. If we move to the vote, all those in favour? All those against? And any abstentions? Okay, that's been carried. Thank you. So if we move on to motion 2, and this is the Women Against State Pension Inequality, and it's being proposed by Councillor Murray. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In 1995, John Major's Conservative government introduced the Pensions Act, setting out a timetable to change the retirement age of women and bring it into line with men. Women born in the 1950s complained that they weren't appropriately notified of the changes by the Department for Work and Pensions, with some only receiving letters about it 14 years after the legislation passed. Others claimed to have only received a notification the year before they were expecting to retire at the age of 60. More said they never received a communication at all. In 2015, a group of women impacted by the situation set up Women Against State Pension Inequality, WASPI for short. WASPI calls for a one-off payment. Sorry, just dropped my speech. Apologies. A one-off payment from the government as fair and fast compensation for the lack of notice affected by women received over state pension age increases. This resulted in serious financial losses and sustained damage to their mental health and well-being. A landmark Parliamentary Ombudsman report in March 2024 called on ministers to urgently apologise and deliver compensation to those impacted. They clearly found the government failed to properly notify women about increases to their state pension age. The Work and Pensions Select Committee produced a very helpful recommendation in May 2024, echoing the need for speed and the government's compensation proposals to be brought before all MPs for their consideration. 5,300 women in Worcester are affected, and this regularly comes up on the doorstep. We have sadly lost 290,000 WASPI women since the campaign began. We lose another every 13 minutes. I urge members to support this motion in an effort to speed up the compensation payments to these women. The motion is as read. Thank you.
Councillor Murray, thank you. And I believe it's being seconded by Councillor Jagger.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to speak after the debate, if that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And would anyone like to speak on the motion? Councillor Denham.
Thank you very much. It is a rather long motion. It's another
special essay, presumably taken from the Lib Dem manifesto. I am a WASPI woman, and with a birthday in April, I was just the wrong side of the relevant tax year. I know that I am very fortunate to be in receipt of an NHS pension, so waiting for my old age pension was annoying, but not financially challenging. Changes to pension age is just one of the many injustices visited against working women. The initial change in 1995 was under John Major's Conservative government. The subsequent increase in 2011 was within the Cameron coalition government with Nick Clegg and the Lib Dems. The Ombudsman says that the Department of Work and Pensions should apologise. I do wonder whether maybe Conservative and Liberal Democrat MPs and who voted for it and party members should also apologise. Many injustices have been visited upon the British people during the last 14 years of austerity under the Conservative government. That is why people voted for change on July the 4th. The Labour government is going to be challenged to prioritise and settle all the injustices it has inherited. We now have a government of public service and an end to 14 years of chaos. There are deep-rooted challenges in Britain today and a massive black hole in public finances. Too many people have lost out under the Conservatives, and there is no doubt that that does include some WASPI women. We will be voting in support of this motion.
Councillor Denham, thank you. And Councillor Mays?
Thank you to Councillor Murray for supporting this motion. I'm very happy to support it. I'm sure many people in this room will know women who have been affected by this injustice, and when I wrote that, I didn't want to assume that there were going to be people in the room, so obviously there are people in the room who are WASPI women. For me, it's my mother-in-law, who was born in 1953, and I think the motion covers a lot of the important points, so I'm not going to reiterate them, but I just wanted to also raise that women who had children before 1978 would have received family allowance rather than child benefit, which didn't credit them with a year's national insurance contributions. So for such women, this can have exacerbated the problem, as not only did they have to wait longer for their pension, they may have received a lower amount because they didn't have the full credits to get the full state pension. It is right that the WASPI women are compensated, and I'll be happy to support this.
Councillor Mace, thank you. And do we have any further speakers? Okay, if we move to the vote, if I could have... Oh. Apologies. Sorry. Councillor Jagger, please sum up the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the discussion and for the expression of support from many people. I just want to be brief and say that this is an issue that has impacted thousands of women in our community. And it is important to remember that this issue is not caused by a single government, but rather a culmination of years of successive governments where too often issues that primarily affect women have fallen through the cracks. The WASPI campaign has been strong in persistent voice for these women, and it is crucial that we listen to them. They are asking for fair compensation for the lack of notice that they received about these changes, and it is not about revising policy or casting blame. Rather, it's about recognizing that these women are not given the sufficient time to prepare for the significant shift in their financial future. Here in Worcester, 5,300 women have been affected by these changes. Across Worcestershire, the number is even higher, and these women who have worked hard all their lives and find themselves facing unforeseen difficulties and would have seen in their years to retirement. We acknowledge that this is not a problem that was caused by the current Labour government, but this government is absolutely fundamental in finding a solution. Labour leadership is essential in ensuring that justice is done, and we want to gain a greater understanding how this issue affects women in our communities. And as local representatives, we have a duty to represent those voices, regardless of the causes of those issues. This is not about party politics. It's about fairness, compassion, and ensuring that no group of people are left behind. So thank you to colleagues who have expressed and that they will support this motion, and I encourage other colleagues to also do so. Thank you very much.
Councillor Jagger, thank you. And now we will move to the vote. So all those in favour? All those against? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, if we...
Abstentions, yeah.
So apologies, I thought it was unanimous. Any abstentions?
I don't want to ruin the party, Madam Mayor, but I can abstain.
Oh, sorry, Councillor.
It's always worth doing all three, I think.
Just in case. Okay. Thank you. Okay, if we move on to motion 3, and it's the winter fuel payment, and it's proposed by Councillor Holmes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to start by amending my own motion, if that's acceptable. Following the vote last week, having previously put in the motion, there's some areas that are not as relevant. So I'd like to move that from the Council resolves to remove the first 2 lines, which are instructing the Managing Director and request all group leaders. I'd like to remove those 2 from the motion, and then change in the third one from pensions to be fed back to the Communities Committee. I realised when I was referring back to my notes that the person who had given me the information about public welfare, public health, was from the Health and Wellbeing Committee when I sat on that for 2 years, and so I'd like to change it from Communities to the Health and Wellbeing Committee, if that's acceptable changes.
Yeah, that's correct. The correct committee. And does everyone understand the amendment? Are you all clear from? Yeah, Councillor Holmes, if I could get you just to.
Yeah.
To run
So
through
it now says that Council resolves to urgently commence. So that paragraph's still in, but instead of going to pensioners not entitled to pension credit, instead of going back to the Communities Committee, it'll go back to Health and Wellbeing. Which has more of a focus on that sort of information, and the last paragraph is unchanged.
Are we all? So the first 2 have gone. Yeah.
She's striking out the whole of the first 2 bullet points, or just the name?
Yeah, Councillor, can I just check? Are you striking out the first 2 bullet points from?
Yes, bullet points.
Yeah. So the first 2 have gone. Yeah. Are we all okay with that? We all clear? Is that a yes? Yeah. Any queries on the? Okay.
Because the vote's already gone, and so there's no point in asking them to not vote for something they already voted for.
Okay. Thank you. So next we have Councillor Rudge to second the motion, please.
I didn't actually.
Oh, sorry. I'm not doing very well this evening.
I did propose.
Yes. Councillor Holmes, please do speak on your amended motion.
Thank you. In Worcester City, a number of pensioners affected by the change in eligibility criteria is 15,476. That means 94% of, 89.4% of pensioners currently eligible for winter fuel payment will not receive this payment from this winter onwards. We will all have affected pensioners in our ward. Whereas I agree that many pensioners are relatively well off and don't need a universal winter fuel payment, this sudden change in policy to the criterion of being a recipient of pension credit removes the essential support for many living on modest fixed incomes who are facing the same steep increases in other bills that we're all aware of. What do they cut back on next? Food. Only those receiving pensions of less than £218.15 a week or £332.95 a week as couples are eligible for pension credit. This is significantly lower than the living wage rate. There is an estimated 37% of eligible pensioners not claiming pension credit, so we have a moral duty to find these people and assist them with their application, as the paperwork can be daunting, especially as it's reliant on modern tech. Many of the pensioners I talk to are too proud to claim what they see as a state handout and which emotionally feels very different to an automated payout. Yes, there is a hole in the country's finances, but our just getting by pensioners should not be penalised to line the pockets of shareholders of energy companies or to pay rockstar wages to their CEOs. So let's find another way to ease the burden of heating costs for the elderly.
Our pensioners often live in energy inefficient houses. Some may resort to heating their houses using very inefficient and polluting methods like open fires, which would be another concern. My ward of Claines has many elderly and frail residents. Keeping warm is essential to their well-being, and I fear many will be at risk of hypothermia or other cold weather-related health conditions due to the sudden removal of the winter payment, coupled with the increase of the energy cap. So Dr. Matt Fung, a public health consultant who regularly addresses the Health and Wellbeing Committee, has previously reported that if we want to reduce the burden on the NHS, we should recognise the benefit of heating homes properly for people with chronic health conditions, and this will include many pensioners. I really think this policy will end up costing the NHS more in needless hospital administration admissions due to hypothermia or cold weather-related conditions. Additionally, pensioners may opt to reduce their social activities, increasing loneliness and isolation, leading some to consider living independently, and possibly therefore increasing demand on our cash-strapped social services, support and charity sectors. I urge all Worcester citizens to keep a close eye on elderly relatives, friends and neighbours, as you would, as you should, but particularly this winter, and I urge this council to support this motion.
Councillor Holmes, thank you. And Councillor Rudge.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, we all appreciate that we've heard examples this evening about the balance that the government has to strike between economic stability and the health of all members of society. And I don't think anyone here pretends that's an easy balance to strike. But we have heard one, I think, very heartfelt plea from a member of the public this evening, indicating some of the subtleties and some of the complexities of the problem. And for me, this policy seems a little bit clunky and a little bit lacking in finesse, if I can put it that way. And my request really is, in supporting this motion, is that that be reviewed to see if there isn't a better way of implementing the policy that doesn't make people suffer. I don't want to repeat what Carol has just said about people going to hospital because they can't heat their homes, but it is a realistic possibility. And the lady who spoke this evening illustrated that point very well, I think. So my support for the motion is for that reason. I would like the government to go back and review it. There's no shame in reviewing a policy. There's no shame in sort of looking to see whether it can't be implemented in a more subtle or a more effective way. And hence I would support the motion and urge colleagues to do the same for that reason. Thank you.
Councillor Rudge, thank you. And would anyone like to speak on the motion? Thank you.
Between 2021 and 2046, a period of just 25 years, the number of people in England living beyond the age of 85 is expected to double from approximately 1.3 million to 2.6 million. Alongside this explosion of an ageing population, the prevalence of age-related long-term health conditions, which disproportionately affect those in lower socioeconomic groups, is expected to arise alongside it. The most deprived in society are nearly twice as likely to live with a musculoskeletal or respiratory condition and 4 times more likely to experience issues with their mental health. The previous government made a series of unfunded spending commitments that has resulted in the incoming Labour government having to make tough choices, one of which was to means test the winter fuel allowance. This targets support to those who need it most, with eligibility based on income and capital, in line with most other benefits, including housing benefit, income support, child tax credit and working tax credit. The Labour government is delivering its manifesto promise to protect the triple lock, and by the end of this Parliament, the full new state pension alone will be worth around £1,700 more than it was at the start. However, as Vice Chair of the Health and Wellbeing Committee, I want to make it explicitly clear to councillors and members of the public beyond this chamber what support mechanisms are in place to protect the vulnerable households this winter. First and foremost, we must urge anyone entitled to receive the pension credit to apply for it. 1.3 million households will continue to receive up to £300 in winter fuel allowance as recipients of the winter fuel allowance, and this is the primary mechanism to ensure that those who are eligible and most in need receive it. Secondly, the Household Support Fund has been extended from October 2024, with £421 million committed to local authorities in England to provide support to vulnerable families and people. Through this, the Warmth on Prescription scheme can assist in addressing fuel poverty for those with particular health conditions who are in receipt of mean-tested benefits or on low incomes. In partnership with Act on Energy, this payment is made directly to the energy provider. Thirdly, the Warm Home Discount Scheme is a one-off payment of £150 to those in receipt of means-tested benefits or if income falls below a certain threshold and in receipt of child tax or working tax credit. Fourthly, the Council Tax Support Scheme offers support to those who find themselves in financial hardship, unable to pay. And finally, Worcester City Council has a discretionary welfare assistance fund to support Worcester households in crisis with essential costs, including energy bills. This Labour government has inherited a financial mess and a society that is riddled with inequality due to 14 years of neglect and mismanagement. It's not ideologically driven austerity, but a recognition that kicking the can further down the road on a journey that involves an increasing ageing population, an associated increased spend on the NHS, and increased spend on pensions will result in things getting harder and harder. The Chancellor has not yet delivered her first budget, and I therefore think this motion in its original form was going to force decisions with pieces of the jigsaw missing. I was reluctant to vote for this without being in receipt of sufficient information on which to make an informed decision, especially as the first two bullet points are now obsolete. But the amendment proposed by Councillor Holmes in its new form, omitting the first two paragraphs, I'm happy to support this amended motion.
Councillor Wilmore, thank you. And Councillor Amos?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think most of the sentiments and arguments have already been put, so I'll be brief. But I do think it is truly shameful that one of the first things our new government did was to attack one of the most vulnerable groups in society. I can quite believe there is a big black hole in the nation's finances, since this country has been living beyond its means for decades. The Chancellor has talked about making tough decisions and choices. But of course, the irony here is that this was a very easy one. Pensioners do not go on protests, marches and demonstrations. They don't organise social or other media campaigns, such as writing to the media or newspapers. No, in fact, they were an easy choice, not a tough choice. And this attack on pensioners is completely unnecessary. If you need big savings and big reductions in government spending, and I don't doubt that we do, then you should be looking into the big expenditure items of the government. If you want to balance the books, do make the tough decisions you claim you're prepared to do. And in saying that, what I mean is the welfare state should be and is a provider of a safety net for people like pensioners on winter fuel payments. This is the safety net. If you want to reduce the welfare budget, make sure you're not continuing to support a way of life for millions of people. It's a safety net, not a way of life. And so, Madam Mayor, most pensioners will have worked hard all their lives, paid their taxes, and made valuable contributions to society and the country. They have earned the right to a bit of comfort and security in their later years. So I will always support measures which look after our elderly folk and give them the dignity and respect they have earned and are entitled to. And I will certainly be supporting this motion as amended.
Councillor Amos, thank you. And Councillor Lewis?
Thank you, Mayor. All four Green MPs stood up to the Labour government voting against removing the winter fuel allowance, but despite their efforts, the bill passed, forcing thousands to choose between heating and eating this winter. I want to look at a particular aspect of the policy. After the vote, Downing Street said that the decision over the payment had been made without a specific impact assessment. They did not understand the repercussions, such as the potential effect on illness and death rates among older people, because they were not obliged under law to carry this out. A more limited equalities assessment was released last week, but this said that around 780,000 older people in England and Wales were expected to not claim the benefits they're entitled to. We have to realise that applying for these benefits has many barriers for many people, and we can see this from all the other things that people should be applying for and they don't. And actually the support network locally may also be stretched with this number of pensioners who need the help. So I'm really worried that pensioners will miss out on the winter fuel payment. Thank you. I will support this motion.
Councillor Lewin, thank you. And Councillor Mays?
Thank you. Thank you to Councillor Holmes for proposing this motion. I think, as we've heard, no one can dispute that there are pensioners who receive winter fuel payments who don't need it. No one can dispute that the Conservatives have left our public finances and public services in ruins. When the Chancellor says there is a 22 billion black hole hidden by the Conservatives that needs to be filled, I absolutely believe her. What I don't believe is that this hole needs to be filled by taking from some of the most vulnerable in our society. Pensioners who are entitled to pension credit but don't claim it because it requires, as we've heard earlier, filling out a 20-plus page form with 200-plus questions on it. Pensioners who are just over the limit for being entitled for pension credit. Pensioners who are acutely vulnerable to cold and damp conditions. Pensioners who are being pushed into fuel poverty by the government. Pensioners who cannot wait until next year for the state pension uplift. The hole in the public finances must be filled. How it is filled is a choice. At the general election, the Green Party proposed a wealth tax paid by less than 1% of households. This would have filled the hole on its own. The government have chosen fuel poverty for pensioners instead. And while I accept it's not ideologically driven austerity, austerity it remains. Members opposite are all of good people of sound character. I cannot really believe that they signed up to support policies like this. I hope that they can support this motion and push our MP and the government to find a better solution.
Councillor Mace, thank you. And Councillor Round, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think having now seen the amended motion, I'm feeling a lot more comfortable. I just want to say that it's frankly, it's utterly appalling, the sweeping national policy that's been introduced by the Labour government. It's accepted, obviously, the reform was needed, but this should have been done in a phased transitional process. And without warning, vulnerable pensioners and pensioners with long-term health conditions and disabilities will be plunged into crisis this winter. I do want to take, I'm happy to support the amended motion as it stands now, but I just want members to be aware that locally in Worcester, the voluntary advice organisations that help the vulnerable people in our society, particularly pensioners, are already facing unprecedented demands and requests for help with very limited resources. The motion will only serve to add further pressure on these overstretched organisations, and without further financial support from this council, it's going to increase the workload and bring these advice organisations to their needs. So I am very welcome that we're going to look at bringing this to Health and Wellbeing Committee so we can discuss this further. But I think that people need to be aware that a lot of pensioners need the help and support of advice organisations who are really struggling at the moment with very limited resources.
Councillor Round, thank you. And Councillor Murray?
Thank you. There's no doubt that the government have got to save money somehow, but they seem to be picking on the most vulnerable members of our society. There are other ways this money could have been raised. A windfall tax on energy giants, tax on social media firms, and reverse the bankers' tax breaks. Lots of things that could be done that would bring money into the coffers of the government. I support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Murray, thank you. Please do. Thank you. Councillor Kimberley, thank you.
There we go. I think I've worked out how to use the button now. Firstly, I must object, Councillor Holmes. You've made an amendment to your motion that we were hoping for, but thank you for that. I think it will help tremendously with achieving what I think we really need, which is a strong and unanimous voice from the City Council in actually letting people know about the support which is going to be available to them. Some of that is on schemes that already existed, some of that is being introduced by the new government. Obviously the pension triple lock will be staying, which will help. That means that a lot of pensioners will be seeing their incomes increase. There is also going to be the warm homes discount, which I am still in the process of learning about. Obviously many of us represent areas of the city where there are high levels of deprivation, and we're very very concerned to make sure that everybody in our wards actually gets to know about the support that will be available for them to make sure that they will be okay through this winter. I think that a lot of people are understandably very anxious. There's been a lot of discussion about this topic. I have certainly seen no shortage of people speaking up about it, so I don't think it is a matter of anybody being an easy target. It is a matter of making sure that they get the support and the assistance that they are entitled to. So thank you. I will look forward to supporting this. Thank you.
Councillor Kimberley, thank you. Do we have any further speakers? Okay, if we... Oh, Councillor Denham, apologies.
That's okay, thank you. I appreciate this is an incredibly difficult decision. No, that is what difficult decisions and unpopular decisions look like. There are alternative suggestions for, and I'm sure the Chancellor of the Exchequer is looking at every single one of those. Many of those changes require legislation. The new government's actually only had a very limited time in Parliament. I think we're all on tenterhooks awaiting the budget statement at the end of October. I think the timing of this was a practical one with regard to, you know, as and when the payment would be made, would be announced, and when it comes out. I think it's the most important message from this debate and this conversation is that there is help available. Within Worcester City, the Labour group have worked really hard over the years to make sure that we do have a safety net. Now, that's been our priority. Other councils cancelled no longer have a discretionary welfare assistance scheme. And one of the absolutely mitigating factors, one of the things that the Chancellor of the Exchequer has done is continue the household support fund. So the last government, when they left with that money finishing in September. So the Chancellor of the Exchequer has extended it through to the end of the financial year, which enables some financial planning for us as a council in terms of the support that we can offer people, as well as for, you know, individuals as to what might be available. And yeah, we await the budget for the bigger decisions. Thank you.
Councillor Denham, thank you. And do we have any further speakers? No. Okay, if we move to the vote, all those in favour, please. Thank you. And all those against? And any abstentions? Okay, thank you. That's unanimous. And so if we move on to our final motion for this evening, it's motion 4 and it's regarding councillors' remote participation in council meetings, and it's being proposed by Councillor Jagger. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, first of all, I wish to address some rumours that have been circulating about me and say, yes, it is true. In the new year, I plan on going into labour. Yes, not that kind of labour, far too painful and messy. But just before I go into the details of this motion, first I want to say thank you to all the men and women in this council, both officers and members of different political parties, who have come to offer words of support, many of whom have encouraged me to bring the baby into the chamber once she's born. Just to clarify for those listening on the radio, if they do, I am pregnant. That's what I was talking about. I want to thank my fellow Liberal Democrats for electing me as their leader, knowing that I was expecting. And I want to thank this council for having a very progressive parental leave arrangement, as I believe I'm the first pregnant woman that will benefit from it. I'm happy to be corrected if that's not true. Finally, I want to thank former Deputy Council Leader Marjorie Bissett, who I'm told was instrumental in making that possible. However, our work is never done, and I wanted to speak to you today about the Local Government Act of 1972, which regulates much of what we do in this council. And as thrilled as I am of the possibility of bringing a baby into this chamber, as someone who has never been a parent, I have no clue how hard it will actually be. And I would much prefer to having the option of sometimes joining remotely so I can mute the meeting if I need to. However, despite much support from both in council and in parliament to allow this to happen, this council is currently banned from allowing remote participation, remote voting for councillors by a piece of legislation that is older than Google. You might be surprised to discover that I don't personally remember 1972, but I brought you a piece of 1972. This. Yeah. So for my students who might be watching this, this is called a floppy disk. And this is a 5.25 floppy disk. And this curious device had been considered cutting-edge technology in 1972. In fact, it was so cutting-edge, they hadn't even been invented, because this one was not invented until 1979, not available until 1980, and the original one was about this big, and so old I couldn't even find one to bring today. But this amazing device holds between 110 kilobytes to 1.2 megabytes. To put it in modern context, it's about 6 ringtones. Recently, the High Court had to interpret the word attendance in the 1972 Act. The third branch of government, their role is to interpret the law in the context of its creation. It is not their job to create new laws or to ensure the law represents our current reality. Therefore, they concluded that attendance in 1972 meant face-to-face presence. So it falls to us, the elected members, to ensure that our laws are created for the world our children will recognize. The impact of this outdated legislation is significant. In a world where technology has allowed us to overcome obstacles as vast and as high as mountains and big as oceans, this 1972 interpretation unnecessarily restricts participation for those who have health issues, caregiving responsibilities, and other barriers to physical attendance. Many people simply choose not to run for office because they foresee these barriers and make them take themselves out of the context. And this has a detrimental impact on the diversity of our representation. Let me be clear, I am not advocating for the elimination of in-person meetings. The pandemic taught us that face-to-face contact is essential in some situations, but not all. What I'm calling for is flexibility for each local council to decide how to best to conduct their meetings. Westminster politicians from 1972, many of whom might not even be alive anymore, should not be dictating how we use technology in our council today, particularly when this is what they consider advanced technology. We did it during the pandemic. Our councils in Wales are currently doing it and have produced guidance that regulate online participation that might be appropriate. We've done it before. We have a regulatory blueprint to follow. I would also like to thank Daisy Cooper, Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats, who has raised this issue in government, and I am pleased to hear that there are a lot of support within Parliament for this legislation. The problem is, Parliament is very busy, and unless we send a very clear message that this is important to us, this legislation will simply fall through the cracks. The Local Government Association, which represents councils, has warned that the recruitment and retention of councillors, especially those balancing career and care commitments, will be hindered if councils are not given the power to hold statutory meetings in a hybrid manner. The LGA recent research shows that 1 in 10 councils surveyed had a councillor step down since 2021 due to the requirement of in-person attendance at meetings. 84% of councils reported that councillors with work commitments would benefit from having hybrid meetings, and 64% said that the same with childcare responsibilities. This is about making the council more accessible, more inclusive, and more attuned to the realities of the 21st century. For this, over the summer, think of this. Over the summer, my husband, the bump, and I got into a taxi navigating the very busy streets in San Francisco. There were cars parked on both sides, cyclists, pedestrians, lots of traffic, and we did a 15-minute journey feeling perfectly safe, which is remarkable considering there was no human driver behind the wheel. It was a completely autonomous Jaguar. The world is changing at an exponential speed, and AI is increasingly able to do more and more complex tasks. And yet, I am here today hoping that you will help me ask Parliament's permission to use technology that is now decades old. So, even if they change the law today, they will not be reflecting the world that she will face. So please think about this motion and the message that it sends about the relevance of our institutions in the modern world and the impact this outdated thinking has for democracy and inclusivity. Thank you very much.
Councillor Jagger, thank you. And we have Councillor Collier to second. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Jagger, for bringing this motion to full council. This is an important issue. Local politics needs to represent and reflect the experiences of people in the communities that it serves, and too often women, particularly those with children, are overlooked. Too often parents of young children are missing from conversations and decision making, and the greater the number of voices and perspectives, the stronger our democratic processes. Before I decided to stand as a councillor, when I was in the early stages of my life as a parent, I really took inspiration from seeing other mums and parents who are working hard in their communities and making a difference. Notably for me, Councillor Hannah Cooper. Visibility of a range of representatives is so important. Globally, the evidence shows that women policymakers prioritise issues that benefit the most vulnerable in society, and those voices must be heard. We need to remove barriers to stop those people from getting involved. With this in mind, I'm so proud to second this motion to allow remote attendance for councillors in specific circumstances, such as those with caring responsibilities, those who are pregnant, have young babies, and those who may be breastfeeding. For inclusivity and furthering adaptable practices, this is a great step forward, and I urge you to support this motion.
Councillor Collier, thank you. And would anyone like to speak on the motion? Councillor Amos.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I have no in-principle objection to this motion at all. I really just have a question to the mover, if I may. I would just like to know from the mover how and who will decide who will be the exceptional circumstances for a councillor to be able to join a meeting remotely rather than in person. And I ask this because I'm just a little concerned, perhaps I'm being unnecessarily worried, that too generous or unclear a definition will simply open up too widely to some members not attending a full council meeting. Obviously, people might be on holiday abroad, and obviously that wouldn't stop them being part of the council meeting. The question is that the right decision? Is that the right exceptional circumstance? And we do know from the COVID era that remote meetings do lack the proper cut and thrust required in such a situation as this political arena of the council chamber. So, Madam Mayor, all I'm doing is I'm hoping that any new provision as contained in the motion will not too easily be subject to abuse, so that bit by bit we become a remote meeting rather than a real meeting. However, with that question and that reservation, Madam Mayor, I intend to vote for this motion.
Councillor Amos, thank you. And I think, Councillor Jagger, if I invite you to sum up and respond to Councillor Amos at the end, if we go through. Thank you. Okay. Next we have Councillor Barnes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's really important that we do enable participation. I remember when I started off politically, although it wasn't in the Labour Party, being told that I should be staying at home and looking after my children because I wasn't really welcome. And then when I did try to participate in a meaningful way, that I had to fit in with their provision, which actually meant taking 4 children on a train to Manchester because they wouldn't actually pay for local childcare. So that's my background of the situation. During the pandemic, things worked pretty well. Although there were abuses, we know of people going into meetings and then turning their cameras off and then not voting on anything. So it's clear they weren't actually there. Those people are no longer in the chamber. They've long since left. But I do think there is a potential for abuse. Online attendance should be granted by exception, I think, and it should be on the basis of such things as childcare, health, not just totally on childcare. I think there are lots of other areas where a monitoring officer, for example, could decide that it was legitimate somebody could participate because there was no other way of them doing it. And I'd like to think that the wider the participation, the better in these. However, I do think that being on holiday should not be a justification for being able to remotely participate in a meeting. So I think there needs to be some kind of justification, but generally I'm really in support of this. Thank you.
Councillor Barnes, thank you. And Councillor Lawrenson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Jag, for bringing this motion to Council. Just like to draw attention to the wording at the very bottom. The Council affirms its support for more inclusive and adaptable governance. I think this, motion's about inclusivity, and so on that basis alone, it's a no-brainer. Just a couple more comments. First one, lots of organisations have retained remote working arrangements since the COVID-19 pandemic, one of the few positive legacies of that awful time. And second point, when I was elected in May 2012, my daughter was 2 years old and my son was 7 months old. And Claire Chaplin memorably was rocking a pram at the back of the room downstairs so that I could participate in that particular event. So thank you very much, Claire. You just made do at the time, didn't you? But now here we are talking about making adaptations so that the council can become more inclusive. And if the change that Councillor Jagger was hoping for was in place at that time, 2012, it would have been positive not just for myself, but my wife and our children. So let's push on with this. It's the present, it's the future. Thank you.
Councillor Lawrenson, thank you. And Councillor Mays.
Thank you to Councillor Jagger, and congratulations on your pregnancy, because I've not offered it before now. And thank you for raising this important matter, and also the history lesson on floppy disks. I wasn't expecting that this evening, but my children, when they see one of those, just think it's the save icon rather than anything else. So my children are now growing up, being 11 and 8, and I well understand the challenges that caring commitments bring. I can't attend meetings regularly on Monday evenings because Katie, my wife, works at the Hive until 10 p.m. And on Tuesdays, it's somewhat of a race to get from the swimming lessons at King's Hawford at 6:15 to the Guildhall for 7 p.m. So if you can smell chlorine, that's why. I think beyond remote attendance of meetings, there are other measures that would be good to see brought in for people with caring responsibilities based on some of the ideas that Stella Creasy MP has raised in Parliament, including being able to appoint a locum or substitute representative for a time that has all the rights and privileges of the elected member, including being able to receive confidential information and vote on matters, and also just being able to appoint a proxy to vote on their behalf from existing councillors. I'd also be happy to see officers with caring responsibilities able to attend remotely. I appreciate the dedication of all our officers staying up late for our meetings, but if these changes open up access to local democracy for councillors or officers to more people, I think that is absolutely vital, and I'll be happy to support.
Councillor Mace, thank you, and Councillor Riaz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, congratulations, Jessie, on the great news, and hopefully you'll have a safe birth come December. I mean, we've got James and Phil here from the local media, and you presented an excellent case in person, and with all the theatrics and with all the with all the paraphernalia in terms of that. I doubt you would be able to replicate that on a computer screen, but I can completely understand in terms of your perspective the need for it and the adaptability and the inclusivity of it. Councillor Mace made the point that actually it's not just about women parents; it's about single fathers who are looking after their children as well. I would probably class myself as a political widow, father widow, in terms of the amount of time that I've missed the opportunity to be with my children at home when my wife is elsewhere doing other stuff. In terms of that, so it works kind of both ways. It's not a singular gender issue in that respect. And also in terms of our former colleague Louise Griffiths, who always campaigned for the issues that she raised, and one of the main reasons she wasn't able to, fully participate or carry on were those barriers in terms of that. But I can completely address that. The right to democracy, however, and people voting us in has to be taken into consideration. In terms of people voted a certain person in, they expect a certain level of service from that person that they've elected in, and they expect them to fully participate in local democracy. And usually the best conversations are the ones that are in person. You don't get, you get the quality, you get to look people in the eye, to have a quite frank discussion with them and thrash it out. And something that was lost over the pandemic, but when we went on to remote working with minimal amounts of participation, and the quality and the level of debate falling below what we normally have here. And officers have time and time again commented on the level of the quality of debate that we have in this chamber in terms of the knowledge and that. And I fear that loss of that quality of debate is really, really crucial when we're making hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of decisions. So there has to be a fine balance in terms of what we achieve here, in terms of the way we go forward. Understand we are in a new era. We've got relevant technologies that we can make use of. We'll make use of, and we have to make sure that the quality of debate here and the participation isn't taken for granted, and that what we owe to the general public and our residents who have voted all for, they get that level and quality. And the same then goes for the general public. If we go remote online, they'll be wondering, well, actually, can we vote at home, sat at home, and not come to the polling booth? So that question then will further arise down the question. So a lot of complications. Overall, happy in terms of trying to find a happy medium forward in terms of going there, but it's a lot more difficult than we think. Thank you.
Councillor Riaz, thank you. And Councillor Cross?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, to pick up on the last point, I think the quality of debate, I think, stems from the culture, and the culture of respectful debate and arguing your differences is instrumental. Online meetings can be successful. My main point I wanted to bring was, we're talking about childcare a lot. We're also what people would call the sandwich generation. We're looking after elderly parents. I consider myself fortunate to be able to be here today. My mother had a fall. She's just about managing down in Devon on her own as a widow, and yeah, so she had a fall, injury, infection. I'm just thankful I can be here. And in terms of the in-person, absolutely, that's where we get to actually approach and talk to each other informally, and all such bridge building exercises and enabling measures are absolutely valuable. But in terms of here, I think it's about being able to have the flexibility that any good employer knows appropriate remuneration, so a basic allowance that doesn't deter or prevent people from becoming councillors is important, and quality of work and commitment is helped through flexible working measures as well. So I personally would be happy to support this. Thank you.
Councillor Cross, thank you. And Councillor Kimberley.
Thank you very much. Thank you for bringing this, Councillor Jagger. I think, I have family members who are disabled, and many friends both within the Labour Party but outside it as well who have mobility issues. I think there's always been an unspoken assumption that standing for office just isn't for them, because they wouldn't be able to get here, they wouldn't be able to participate, and I think that's wrong. We're all the poorer for the absence of disabled voices in the council chamber and in all chambers of power, and I welcome this motion on the principle that it would be a huge win for disability rights, and because of its potential to open doors for an entire new community to enter the world of politics and governance. Thank you for bringing it.
Councillor Kimberley, thank you. And Councillor Jagger, if I can invite you to respond.
Sorry, can I just come in very briefly?
Yes.
I just wanted to very briefly remind everybody that, as Councillor Jagger discussed, we're talking about very specific circumstances. We're not talking about our residents not being able to see us.
Councillor Collett, sorry, I've just been advised that because you seconded,
sorry.
you're not allowed to. But oh, it was
Jessie, Jessie will come. Sure, Jessie will cover that.
yeah, well, yeah. So perhaps just in future, just reserve the right until the end. But yeah, but Councillor, no, Councillor Jag, if you could respond to Councillor Amos and also sum up, thank you.
Thank you very much for all the debate and for all the support that people have expressed. I'd like to clarify a couple of things, and I think that might be what Katie was trying to say. At the moment, we don't even have the power to have the discussion as to whether we can or who can and where. That power sits at Westminster. We can't even have that debate. So all this motion is doing is asking Parliament to change the definition of attendance so that it could include remote attendance, and to delegate the power to us so that we can have that discussion. This chamber can then decide it doesn't want remote meetings. It can decide when they want to have those remote meetings, what circumstances, and that might be different in different councils in different countries. Different governments might adjust it. But the point is, we should be making that decision here, not in Westminster. So I understand all the concerns. I share some of the concerns. I don't particularly like teaching hybrid lessons in my job because it creates complications. But it is up for this chamber, and we're hopefully, if Parliament just gives us the chance to have that discussion here, we can come up with a policy that we are comfortable with, and we can amend that policy as we see fit, which is what this motion is asking for. Thank you very much.
Councillor Jagger, thank you. And if we can move to the vote, so can I ask all those in favour? All those against? And any abstentions? That's unanimous, thank you. Okay, next we move on to agenda item 8, and we have reports from relevant committees on matters which are referred to this council. And I'd please just like to remind everyone that these have been debated already, so they are referral reports. So if we move on to 8.1 first, and it's a referral report from planning, which is being proposed by Councillor Lewin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. It's with great pleasure that I present to Council the annual Planning Committee report, which highlights the successful achievements of the service this year. There's been continuing progress in the service performance. The Officer Management team, headed by Sian as Corporate Director, Duncan as Head of Planning, Paul as the Service Manager, and Hannah as the Planning Policy Manager, provide strong leadership and stability for the service. There is a culture of continuous improvement of the service among officers and for members. I'm particularly pleased that we have started new member training to help with solid decision making, improved outcomes on development, and a stronger ability to refuse inappropriate proposals. This is reflected in the excellent performance in processing applications and defending decisions on appeal. And I'm just going to highlight a few things from the report that exemplify this. So this year, the Planning Service team have exceeded the government targets for considering applications, in nearly all applications being processed more quickly. And 38% of householder applications are actually turned around within 6 weeks, which is amazing. The team has continued to make steady progress in reducing the backlog that had built up. In 2022, I'd like to remind members that there were 350 applications outstanding, and at the moment it's just 40, and that includes some really complicated applications which you'd expect to take a bit longer. Therefore, there's been a significant improvement in the overall efficiency of the service. Of course, every service receives complaints and compliments, and as Chair, I really know that residents are not always happy with decisions that have been made within the constraints of the planning system. I am therefore pleased to see that the majority of complaints have not been upheld, and the service has also received the highest number of compliments for any council service this year. As to the quality of decisions, there were 14 appeals and only 1 was upheld, and the planning inspector agreed with the decision by planning committee when we refused an application, saying that our reasoning was robust. And I'd just like to take another moment to highlight the incredibly important work of the planning enforcement team, which I think is truly the backbone of our planning system. Their role in upholding the integrity of the planning system and ensuring public confidence cannot be overstated. By making sure developments comply with planning rules, they protect both our built and natural environments, and without their diligence, the consequences for our communities would be significant. I would like to recognise the valuable support the team has provided to councillors with casework, particularly, and they are helping to resolve issues efficiently. Despite an increase in the number of complaints, the team has successfully reduced the overall number of enforcement cases that they are handling, demonstrating their commitment to effective and timely resolution. At the moment, the policy officers are working incredibly hard with the South Worcestershire Development Review, and we have got proposed changes to the National Planning Policy Framework. The Joint Advisory Panel, with a number of council on, meet frequently, but this is quite a burden for the officers, and we wish them well. I would like to extend my thanks to all the committee members and officers for their dedication and hard work. I'd particularly like to thank the Vice Chair, Pat Agar, for her continued help and support. The officers' professionalism and commitment have been instrumental in delivering these positive results, and their efforts, combined with the high level of engagement from their members, has made a significant contribution to the Council's duties as a local planning authority. Thank you.
Councillor Lewin, thank you. And have Councillor Agar to second.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, thank you for the kind words, Councillor Lewin. I'm not going to repeat what Councillor Lewin has said, and I know that you've all read the report, at least I'm sure you have. I'd just like to point to one or two highlights. Firstly, the significant amount of time that councillors who are planning councillors put in. It's not just the mandatory training. We had 10 meetings this year. We have more meetings than other committees. And we do bite-sized training in between as well. We engage in site visits, and we also do an annual planning review tour. So it's quite a lot of time, and you do need to commit to it to do it. And so I think Councillor Lowe are quite right to thank the councillors who actually do take part, because they really do an excellent job. I'd like also to point to the improved quality of planning applications that we get. And that's happened not only through changes to the website, which offers better information to applicants, so we're getting a better quality of applications, but also that the way in which the reports are written for the planning committee that better reveal the planning balance and therefore support and assist members in making their decisions. And I think that's reflected in the fact that we've agreed with officers rather more than usual. We didn't always used to in the past, perhaps. And I'd also like to point to the way in which the officers have reduced that huge backlog that we had. A lot of resources have been put into it, and it's really worked quite well. We have a full complement of staff now. We didn't always have that. And the management, I think, of the team has been excellent. So, you know, the fact that we only have 40 applications outstanding, down from 85, is staggering, quite frankly. So, you know, they really deserve our thanks for the level of effort they've put in. So I don't really want to say a great deal more, except that the SWDP, as you all know, has been a very long process this time due to COVID and other delays. It's been a 7-year process rather than the 5-year one. And we hope that the last of it, we will see the last of it going to the Government Inspector in December. So there is no turning back. We have the examination in public to go. Everybody could go to that if they wanted to. And the only other thing I would say about that is we've really seen the value of our green spaces since COVID, and that's reflected, I think, in the SWDP review and in the way that we consider planning applications as well. So, yes, I'm delighted to see that, and I hope everybody else is. That's about it, really. Thank you.
Councillor Agar, thank you. And Councillor Riaz.
Yep, thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I congratulate the officers involved and the chair and the vice chair of planning in terms of the contents of this report. I have been an open, constructive critic of the planning department over the last few years in terms of the level of outstanding cases that have come under the scrutiny in terms of post pandemic, and the level of confidence that gives out in the general public and to our city's businesses in terms of the backlog and to enable them to unlock their potential in terms of growth, etc. But I'm glad actually with the new officer corps, with the new planning officers on board, that we've managed to get that under control, and that's a good sign going forward. Obviously, the new government agenda is about growth and about unlocking new housing, new potential developments in and around the city. So, and one of the roles that we as councillors have is about striking a balance in terms of being the conduit between business, between the applicant, between residents, and achieving a happy balance to ensure both sides of the views are heard. And I hope that planning committee members do take that level of scrutiny to officers as well, and do hold them to account and do challenge them where necessary, because we have an overall vision to achieve. We've heard how many housing numbers in the South Worcestershire Development Plan that we have to achieve in order to unlock the need for this city and for the residents of this city. So, we are going to increasingly get those applications, and I ask the planning team officers and to realise the new city plan that we'll be formulating together, that actually planning plays a huge part in terms of that, and that the committee realise the bigger objective as well as residents' concerns. In terms of the planning enforcement, obviously we've got a fresh new team out with the old, in with the new, young, fresh, plenty of energy, dealing with all those issues. But that youthful zest and that energy also comes with a lack of greenness, I suppose, in terms of experience, in terms of what the level of diplomacy is often needed, in terms of tackling difficult cases with difficult developers, or getting hold of all that. So my blessings out to the team. If there's any help or support that they need from senior officers, please ask them to take that. It's a huge learning curve, but we're going in the right direction. So congratulations.
Councillor Riaz, thank you. And Councillor Gregson.
Thanks, Meg. I just wondered whether I could ask Chair of Planning, in the light of the reference in the Shrub Hill Quarter report to a review of conservation areas, and the fact that our conservation areas have not been reviewed properly, and some of them are actually very much out of date. When is that review going to take place?
Councillor Lewin, thank you.
Thank you for that question. I'll raise it with the officers.
Thank you. And do we have any further speakers, questions? No? Okay, if we move to the vote, all those who are happy to note the report, all those in favour? All those against? And any abstentions? Thank you, that's unanimous. Next, if we move, we've got the referral report from Place and Economic Development Committee, and it's being proposed by Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight I'm urging support for the renewal of Worcester bid for the next 5 years. To remind colleagues, this report has been to PEG Committee, for which it received unanimous support. The current bid has demonstrated and strengthened our city centre. It's funded by a levy of business, matched by investment from Worcester City Council. This partnership has delivered enhanced cleaning and security, a cleaner, safer environment, attracts more customers and improves the overall experience. Marketing promotion, targeted campaigns boosted visitor numbers and footfall, benefiting from all businesses within the bid area. Events and initiatives, from festival lights to street entertainment, the bid creates a vibrant atmosphere, drawing people in and encourage them to stay longer. Improved communication. The bid acts as a vital link between businesses and the council, ensuring their voices are heard. The proposed bid renewal builds on these successes, and the report details exciting plans for supporting green initiative, promoting sustainability and a cleaner environment, aligning with our city's broader goals. Enhancing digital marketing, leveraging technology to reach a wider audience and attracting new customers, investing in skills and training, upskilling the local workforce to meet the evolving needs of business, and continued focus on safety and security, maintaining a welcoming, secure environment for everyone.
This renewed bid is a collaborative effort driven by local businesses for the benefit of the entire city centre. It fosters thriving and competitive and resilient business environment, creating jobs and attracting investment. A successful bid is a win-win for businesses, residents and visitors. I strongly encourage you to vote in favour of the Worcester City Business Improvement Plan 2025 to 2030. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Cooper, thank you, and Councillor Riaz to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to formally support and second this motion. We've heard at the PED committee last time what an excellent report that has been produced by the bid and what the bid have delivered over and above what they traditionally deliver. And I think that's the key exceptional thing here in terms of what this new bid programme has brought forward, and the project delivery has been beyond anybody's imagination in the transformation that they've achieved by simply just thinking out of the box, working in a different way, and actually understanding what the residents of this city need in terms of that which has is instead of profit and numbers focused and pounds focused. It's been about people. It's about understanding who uses the city centre, who are the key players in and around there, what are the problems that the businesses are facing, and who are what stakeholders are needed in order to solve those problems. And they've hit the magic equilibrium where they understand that, and that has actually in turn improved the visitor experience within the city centre and reduced shoplifting on the high street, dealt with all the issues that the police and the NHS can't deal with in and around, and made it a more holistic package that is serving this city to the best of its ability and going above and beyond. And that's why I'm exceptionally proud to support this bid, because we really are getting this is probably one of the best bids in the UK, and I'm quite safely happy to say that and shout about on a national level in terms of what we've achieved here. Really, really proud of the team, and not forgetting the board of directors on there, including Robin, who have been shaping all of this. It's something that this city needs to be proud of. I'm happy to support it.
Councillor Riaz, thank you, and Councillor Scott. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My role in Cathedral Ward takes me around the city centre lots of times, and I have spoken to many of the businesses who operate here, and I speak and hear what the voices of the users of the city centre are. And we clearly have a centre of great quality and vibrancy, one which has bucked many of the trends. Shopping has changed enormously, but the centre is still one to be really proud of and really enjoy. Now, the bid, of my knowledge, and I spent a bit of time in my career in working in town centre management elsewhere, is clearly, as Jabba Riaz says, a very successful organisation, demonstrating clear leadership in a multi-agency way, leading a partnership with great collaboration and really sharing with the stakeholders in the city the strategy for the area. And it's one which we share, and we're really proud of the work they do. So I'm sure that the businesses in the area will join with us in voting to continue its existence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I see no further questions, so if we move to the vote, all those in favour, obviously it's the Place and Economic Development Committee Business Improvement District 25 to 30 we're looking at with this one, so all those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? That's unanimous. Thank you. And next, remaining with Place, if we move on to Shrub Hill Quarter, and this is being proposed by Councillor Norfolk.
Let's let her come back in.
When she's here. So yeah, So, yes, Councillor Norfolk, thank you. Sorry, you're out of the room, but we've moved to Place and Economic Development, Shrub Hill Quarter. So if you'd be happy to. Right.
The Shrub Hill Supplementary Planning Document, I'm not going to say lots about it, the Shrub Hill Supplementary Planning Document has been referred to full council by the Place and Economic Development Committee held in July this year. It provides clear guidance to developers as to what is expected from them when they are considering purchasing a site and or submitting a public planning application. It has been developed in conjunction with the County Council, which owns the Shrub Hill Industrial Estate. The plans for the Shrub Hill Quarter include a provision for mixed commercial development and housing. I'd like to thank officers for producing such a comprehensive and easy to read document, and I'm more than pleased to recommend the Council adopt this document as part of the local development framework.
Councillor Norfolk, thank you. And it's been seconded by Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. I stand before you as an advocate of adoption of the Shrub Hill Quarter Supplementary Planning Document, SPD, to remind members that this has been to PED, where it has voted through unanimously by the PED Committee, by Labour and Green councillors who were present at the vote. The Shrub Hill Quarter represents an exciting opportunity for Worcester's future. This centrally located area holds immense potential for regeneration and economic growth. However, to fully realise this potential, we need a clear vision and robust framework. The Shrub Hill Quarter provides precisely that. The benefits are clear development guidelines, improved infrastructure, community integration, and promoting economic development. It allows for the creation and innovation development proposals while ensuring they align with an overall vision of Shrub Hill Quarter. By adopting this document, we send a strong message to investors and developers. We show them Worcester is committed to responsible and sustainable regeneration, and we showcase a future-orientated city that embraces innovation while preserving its unique historical character. The Shrub Hill Quarter represents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Let's seize it with a clear vision and a collaborative approach. I urge you in favour of adopting the Shrub Hill Quarter Supplementary Planning Document. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Cooper, thank you. And I see no further questions. Apologies. Councillor Denham, please. Councillor Denham, thank you.
It's not a question. I am one of the City Council's representatives on the Shrub Hill Quarter project group, does it call itself? Steering group, thank you. Councillor Norfolk is the other representative. And just to kind of reassure members, there has been, a great deal of kind of public consultation and involvement in this document, including, ourselves as members of this council or the people who were councillors last year, potentially. And it is really important that we do kind of sign this off and agree it this evening, because that sets, the parameters and the vision as to what the development on that site will be, and also kind of importantly what it won't be. So I urge members to support. Thank you.
Councillor Denham, thank you. And Councillor Mays. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you to officers and everyone on the PED committee to get this supplementary planning document to this point. I'm definitely happy to support it, because having read all 150 pages of it, there's a lot of excellent content in there that we should be very excited about seeing in future. I was particularly glad to see that the council is going to work with ASDA to improve the pedestrian route through the car park in St Martin's Quarter, as that's extremely dark, dingy and smelly, particularly around what is left of the cycle parking there. There's only one hoop left at the moment. I think the increased target to get 20% of mode share for cycling is extremely good. I do have concerns that the SPD doesn't have enough on how much storage there should be. I know it mentions storage of one per household and storage of per 250 square metres floor space for commercial properties. But if we look at somewhere like Herefordshire's cycle storage requirements, they include specific amounts for different types of commercial properties, including 1 space per 100 square metres for shops and supermarkets and 1 per 10 square metres for restaurants. There is also a lot of mentions of the multi-storey car park, but no mentions that I could see for requirements of any amount of EV charges. Perhaps they're out of scope of the document, or I simply missed it. But other than those particular points, it's an excellent document. I'm happy to support it.
Councillor Mace, thank you, and Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I just have a question. It's on page 67. The little section, it says, a cycle travel to work percentage of 10 is too low and should be raised to 20%. I'm just wondering if these figures have any basis in reality or fantasy. So my specific question is, on what basis was it originally fixed at 10%? And what is the basis on which it has now been doubled to 20%? Is it because these are round figures, or is there some factual rationale for these figures? I ask because at the moment it's reckoned about 1% of commuters cycle to work across Worcestershire. So I'm interested to see that we've gone from 10% to 20%, and I just wonder, as I say, whether it's factual or just fantastical.
Councillor Norfolk. Thank you.
I'll take that up with officers. Thank you, Councillor Amos. But as I'm sure he's aware, cycling to work strategies are part of a county commitment, and this plan was developed in conjunction with County Council. But I will raise those specific questions with County and City Council officers. Thank you very much.
Councillor Norfolk, thank you. Do we have any further comments or questions? Okay, so all those happy to approve? Any against? Any abstentions? And that's unanimous, thank you. So next we move on to 8.5. It's the referral report from Policy and Resources and its Treasury Management, and this is being proposed by Councillor Denham. Thank you. Sorry.
Leisure Centre,
Sorry, apologies. Let me revert back to agenda item 8.4. First of all, with Policy and Resources, we have the energy saving measures at Purdyswell Leisure Centre, and this is also being proposed by Councillor Denham. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Policy and Resources Committee was only a short time ago. This recommendation is coming to full council because of the scale of the investment and expenditure that's being proposed. This is about putting solar panels on Purdyswell Leisure Centre and also investing in destratification fans. So if you've not encountered those before, it blows the hot air goes up, and if you have a fan, it swirls it around and distributes the heat throughout the building, thus saving on energy costs and, importantly, saving on carbon. We're lucky. Due to the diligence of our officers, we have obtained substantial funding towards this from the Sport England Swimming Pool Assistance Fund. Many councils, many organisations that run swimming pools have really struggled with the increase in the costs of energy, and a number of pools unfortunately have closed. So I don't think it's exaggerating to say that this is actually about the future of our swimming pool and keeping it open for the long term, reducing energy costs, reducing carbon. It's a win-win-win on all fronts, and I hope that all members will support it. Thank you.
Councillor Denham, thank you. And I have to second, I have both Councillor Jagger and Councillor Stevens, so it's up to you who wants to, I guess, speak first. Okay. Councillor Jagger, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I can reserve my right to speak until after comments from the Chamber.
Thank you. And do we have any comments or questions? Councillor Amos, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just two simple questions, actually, on page, well, the front page, page 217. The figure of 155,000, obviously that's what it's been, as I understand it, that's what it's been increased to, but from what? What was the original figure that it's been increased to 155,000? And the second question is, when can we expect to see a return on this investment? Roughly, when can we expect to see a return?
Okay, Councillor Amos, thank you. Councillor Denham, would you like to respond?
I would if I can find the right bit in the report. There absolutely is a return on investment within a reasonable time frame. Thank you. Business case is in the tables. It's a return of 11%. So it's, yes, the cost has gone up somewhat because the cost of many of these things do, but it is still very much an excellent business case and viable. I still can't find the actual return on investment time. But it absolutely is a proven business case. And if you read the report, and the report you actually have in front of you, and the report that we discussed at Policy and Resources, that information is there.
Councillor Denham, thank you. And I understand the numbers are in the report. Do we have Councillor Lewin? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just something to put this project into context. The outsourced leisure centres used to not be included in the council's footprint, and they now are. And they actually account for 33% of our footprint. So therefore, Purdiswell, as the leisure centre with the swimming pool, is the largest contributor to this. So this is actually a significant reduction in our carbon footprint as a council and reaching our goal for 2030. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lewin, thank you. Any further comments or questions? No, okay, if we're happy, well, if we move to approve, all those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? And that's unanimous, thank you. And next we're moving to agenda item 8.5, but here I just need to hand over to Sian Style briefly.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. When the agenda pack was published for committee, an amendment to the Policy and Resources report that was actually picked up by the sharp eyes of a councillor and made at the Policy and Resources Committee wasn't then subsequently translated into the version that was then printed off for your agenda packs. So forgive the long-winded explanation. The version which is now published on the website is absolutely accurate, but if you are still working off the hard copy, I need to advise you that in paragraph 6.8 of the Policy and Resources Committee, it should read, the Council has been able to maintain its average credit score. That point was discussed at P&R, and that was agreed that that was the accurate statement. If you're working off an electronic copy, you're thinking, yes, that's what it says. If you're working off a paper copy, you're looking at an incorrect text. We have corrected it, so it now says the Council's been able to maintain its average credit score.
Sian, thank you. Is everyone clear, happy with? Okay, thank you. And yet, so for this one, we have, it's been proposed by Councillor Denham.
Thank you. I mean, that introduction almost made the report exciting. And who was the eagle eyes that spotted that? I mean, I do recall the conversation, and I have made a note on my paper copy from Policy and Resources. This is about how we manage money within the City Council, and it is public money, and mismanagement can lead to terrible, terrible things and loss of services. This demonstrates what we are doing, what the key principles are, and we have maintained our average credit score, which is excellent, and it is all in line with the SIPFA Treasury Management Code. I commend it to all councillors, and it's a financial item, so full council needs to agree.
Councillor Denham, thank you. And Councillor Stephen, I believe you're seconding this one.
Yes, it's obviously a very long and quite a complicated report. And as Councillor Denham has just said, it is a measure of the liquidity and the credit scoring and the financial management of the council. That has been discussed at length at committee, and the report shows that there are no problems for this council as we stand today. So again, I would support this report as well and commend everybody to vote for it.
Councillor Stephen, thank you. And I see no hands. So are we happy to approve the Treasury Management Annual Report 23-24? All those in favour? Any against? No. Any abstentions? That's unanimous. Thank you. Yes. And for the next item, agenda item 9, Sean and Claire will leave the chamber and return at the end. And agenda item 9 is the statutory appointments of returning officer, electoral registration officer, deputy returning officer and deputy electoral registration officer. And I would like to invite David Blake to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. This report is somewhat bittersweet, as you would imagine. It's always enjoyable to recommend to members that a colleague takes on additional responsibilities, but in this situation, I'm going to embarrass him slightly now, it is rather sad that it comes with the departure of Shane, a very well-respected and regarded colleague that brings this matter to everybody's attention. So, in terms of the report, I'm not going to go through each of the individual recommendations at this stage, but I'll just pick out some salient points from the report. I hope that you've had the opportunity to read through, particularly the recommendations, because they are slightly complicated in terms of meeting government legislation. So first of all, it is a constitutional requirement for the council to appoint an officer to the statutory posts of returning officer and electoral registration officer. Returning officer is responsible for the conduct of the poll, the polling stations, and as you will be aware, the postal ballot and the verification and the count, and the electoral registration officer is responsible for maintaining the register of electors and lists of absent voters for the local authority area. Those are the two roles. And as I've already said, this report comes as a result of Shane Flynn retiring from the council. Sian Stroud, our Corporate Director of Planning and Governance, is appointed to these two positions. The Electoral Commission guidance recommends the appointment of a Deputy Electoral Registration Officer. Since 2015, Claire Chaplin, our Democratic and Civic Services Manager, has been appointed as Deputy in these two positions. So I would ask members to note the reappointment of Claire into those two posts. The returning officer and deputy will be remunerated in accordance with council approved scales for local elections or relevant scales in respect of regional and national polls. So in terms of tonight's recommendations, if they are approved by members, there will be no additional financial impact. A couple of other points I will just make. Responsibility in these roles rests with the officers. They are separate from the appointments as officers to the council. The officer is accountable to his or her statutory responsibilities. And I think it's therefore prudent to note that as a result, the council shall take out and maintain insurance to indemnify the council and the officers against legal expenses incurred in defending any proceedings brought against the council or officers, and also to indemnify the officers up to the value of any excess associated with that insurance. As I said when I started speaking, I won't go through the individual recommendations because you will appreciate it's either all of them or none of them in this instant. So I will stop there and hand over to members to bring forward this policy. Thank you.
David, thank you. And just before we propose, does anyone have any questions for David? Are you all clear on? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you. If I can move to Councillor Denham to propose. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure I'm proposing or seconding. It is a complex set of recommendations. It is a legal requirement and the legal framework. And these are absolutely vital roles. They are the practical and operational delivery of democracy, which is absolutely what we are about. I also want to give my thanks to Shane, whose quiet, competent, unflustered approach has ensured the safe delivery of votes and the voting system in this city, despite having to deal with stressed and emotional candidates at times. And to say he's had a hand in getting us all here is, you know, that is the reality of the system, and extremely grateful for that. I have every confidence that the reappointment of Claire Chaplin and the appointment of Sian Stroud, that our democratic system, the voting system, would be in safe hands. I think, you know, we all know Sian's role as the monitoring officer and legal advice, and have come absolutely to trust her competence and her judgment within those roles. I'm sure she will do an excellent job with this new role.
Councillor Denham, thank you. And I have Councillor Stevens a second.
Yes, my thanks also go to Shane. He's had quite a number of elections to cope with over the years, probably more than he probably expected when he took on the role, with various by-elections and additional general elections. As Councillor Denham has said, we have continuity going forward with Claire Chaplin, and I think also that we are going to be putting forward Sian Stroud. I can't think of someone better to do that than our current monitoring officer, so this gets my total support as well. Thank you.
Stephen, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments? Councillor Riaz, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just want to extend my thanks to Shane. He's been an excellent servant to this city, to me personally, and to I'm sure many of the councillors in this council. You know, quietly behind the scenes, he's the nuts and bolts of the operation that keeps everything going and ensuring that we meet all our financial requirements and you know, squirrels away the money to save in a safe place, to make sure that we're financially sound. And it's you know, it's a thankless task, but a really important one. And you know, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Shane, for all you do. Obviously, in terms of this recommendation, absolutely fine with that. The only question that I would have is obviously the amount of burden that places it on existing officers in terms of their existing workload, and how we manage that and to ensure that the workload is spread and that we still get the same great level of service. Thank you.
Councillor Riaz, thank you. And Councillor Kimberley? Oh, Councillor Barnes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just asking how much extra Shana will be taking on, because obviously she's got a pretty heavy workload with all she does for us now. And how are you going to manage that new responsibility, David?
David, thank you.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yes, I think there are no roles in the organisation where many staff have any slack. So I think wherever this role moves to, there will be the same challenge. I think, don't tell her I said this, but you know, Sian is extremely diligent, works extremely hard, and we know through her promotion to her corporate role when that took place, because she came here as a deputy director, she lived up to the challenge, so she's already demonstrated, I think to me certainly, that she has the capacity and capability to take on additional work. Having said that, you're absolutely right, and we will need to make sure we work closely together to ensure that she has the space to take on the new role, particularly when elections come around. Hopefully, there'll be a while where they won't come around and she won't be needed to do this, but you never know, you never know. But it's something I've spoken with Sian about, of course, and it was a consideration before we put this report in front of members. Thank you.
David, thank you. And Councillor Lawrenson?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, fully support the proposed appointments. I just want to take the opportunity to also thank Shane for all his support. I'm absolutely gutted that he's moving on. Truly am. I just hoped he'd be here forever, to be honest. So, how dare you retire? And that copy of Monty Don's Italian Gardens on DVD is yours to keep, so you don't give it back, okay? No. You've got more time to watch it now, so keep it. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Lawrenson, thank you. Any further? No. Okay. I think as well as Chair, I tend not to comment here being Chair, but I would like to say thank you to Shane. Yes, and wish you all the best. Thank you. And so, if we, bearing in mind the nature and how the proposal and the seconder works, if we just go to it all en bloc, so all those happy to approve? Any against? Any abstentions? That's all good because I don't have Claire here to count, so thank you. Yeah, so hopefully someone won't know. Yeah, Margaret.
Give it a couple more minutes just to keep them, you know, on their toes.
They're coming back. So I think now we can move on to agenda item 10, and it's the report of the.
Congratulations.
Yes, actually. It's just to reassure you both, congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and if we can move on to Councillor Agar and Councillor Agar's report as the Armed Forces Champion.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to read this, you'll be relieved to know. I'm just going to go through a few of the highlights. I'd like to particularly pay tribute to the team that gathered to make the commemoration of the 80th anniversary of D-Day such a success. That was led by community engagement, so thanks to Warwick and Neil. Comms played a large part as well in getting the message out about what we were doing over the week, because it was a whole week of events, it wasn't just one thing. Democratic Services played their part too, I'm grateful to them, museums and the veterans themselves. There were talks, there were commemorations, we lit a beacon, we did the lot, you know. And you might ask, why is it relevant now that we do these things? And I think one of the reasons it was relevant for me was that the participants of D-Day have largely gone now, you know, they've passed on. But their children are still with us in many cases. And I spoke to a couple of ladies whose fathers had fallen in Normandy. And one of them was certainly going to the beaches to remember her father after the commemorations were all over. So it's tremendously important to them that that acknowledgement of their sacrifice, their family's sacrifice, is acknowledged still. And that we acknowledge the traditions that go with it as well on behalf of the veterans. So it's a hugely important civic occasion, and a tremendous debt of thanks is owed to that entire team. So, you know, they did a huge amount of work, and I think it was greatly appreciated. It was a great success and well attended, and the veterans showed up and must have been quite exhausted by the end of all of it, because, you know, there were colour parties here and there and everywhere. So they were tremendously, what can I say, energetic for their age, is all I'm going to say. Other than that, the poppy drop tends to be the thing that starts the season of remembrance. And for those of you who've not seen it before, we have a small ceremony outside the Guildhall. Usually the mayor is there, and the theatre of it is rather wonderful, because we stand there in silence as poppy petals are showered from the roof of the Guildhall. And it reminds us to be charitable and to support the poppy appeal, which is so important even today to the veterans of our city and beyond. The poppy train was an innovation that's happened for a few years now. It started during COVID. And I pay tribute to the mayor and consort of the time, Louis, and your consort. You turned up, and the colour parties from the Royal British Legion and the Worcestershire Regiment turned up in the dark and wet. And we went to Shrub Hill Station, and you presented wreaths to be taken to Paddington and placed there at the memorial there. And one of the Worcestershire Regiment had a brother who had served and who was a railwayman, so especially memorable for him. It was personally special. I go to the Armed Forces Covenant Partnership, and the work there is ongoing. If you want to have a really good look at their action plan and what they're up to, it's all on the county website, so I won't go into it in detail here. But if you've got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them at a later stage. As for the next steps, there's one or two things. Oral history's become quite important. I go to the Veterans Breakfast Club most months, and they've asked for us to do some oral history with them. And that's important partly because many of them have served in more recent conflicts. And there are a lot of military histories about conflict, but not so much about ordinary service life. And I think one of the things I find is that the public don't have much concept of what that is like. And I'd like them to understand it better. And I'd like the forces to be able to tell their stories, because the forces actually just thrive on their stories. They all tell them all the time. In fact, my father was terrible for it. You couldn't get him away from people when he started. So I know what that's like. But they also said that they would like to see more commemoration of more recent conflicts, which are very relevant to their service lives. So that's something I'll discuss with them in the near future and see what form that could take. I'm not saying we should have lots and lots of different commemorations all year, because that wouldn't really be very practical. So we'll look at that. And I would like to encourage all councillors to turn up on Remembrance Sunday, because it is a very special day. It matters so much to the veterans and to many members of the public that you wouldn't actually believe it mattered to. You know, the families of veterans, the families of armed forces servicemen and women who are serving now as well. You know, we get quite a crowd, and to see their councillors taking part and letting them know it matters to us really does make a difference. Thank you.
Councillor Agar, thank you. And I think Councillor Udall, you?
Yeah, very briefly, Madam Mayor, thank you. And I'd like to pay tribute to Councillor Agar for her work she does as Armed Forces champion. She does a lot of fantastic work to promote and support the Armed Forces in Worcester, including those who have retired. Madam Mayor, I have received some comments about how we mark Armed Forces Day here in Worcester. So does Councillor Agar have any views about how we can expand the day to encourage greater public awareness and participation? Second question, the War Memorial in Cripplegate Park, the famous poppy in the park. It's very much appreciated by a lot of people, especially St John's residents. Can she consider consulting with forces groups and charities about how we can use that memorial more frequently than just a quarter a day, which takes place in April, to actually incorporate that as a memorial, as a living memorial in the park, which we can actually use more frequently?
Thank you, Councillor, for your questions, and I'll certainly consult on that. So look forward to that.
Councillor Agar, thank you. And Councillor Amos?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I also thank Councillor Agar for her work as the Armed Forces Champion? I think this is a very important post, and I'm very proud to be a councillor here with a position like this that we have a report about every year. And Madam Mayor, can I just take this opportunity to congratulate Worcester City Council on commemorating VJ Day this year. That's Victory over Japan. I think people are familiar with D-Day and VE Day, so it really was heartening to see that the, quote, forgotten army, as the British Army in the Far East came to be known, who defeated Japanese barbarity, were commemorated, at least in Worcester. So I'm very proud of the Council, and thank you to everybody who was involved in that decision.
Councillor Amos, thank you. And Councillor Stephen?
Thank you. Thank you to Councillor Agar for this. Much of those 12 months has had quite a big overlap with my mayoral year, so I've saw Pat do a great amount of work in that year, and I really do appreciate the work you put into it. There were a number of events we went to together, and I certainly learnt a lot about the role that you do and the great work that the Royal British Legion do in this city. I think it also shows to me the value of the members' champions. So maybe there isn't a members' champion for everything, but certainly this one is a very good example of why we need a members' champion to keep this very much alive and something that is very important. And lastly, I just want to say thank you again to Pat for this, because I see with Pat what she's doing with this role is done with a passion rather than something that she really does care about it. So thank you very much for all your hard work in the last 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen. Do we have any further questions or comments for Councillor Agar?
Just thank you for the kind words, and yes, it is a passion. And I suppose I think that a lot of people who don't have much contact with the armed forces think they're all gung-ho. They're not. They sort of prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And we ask them to do something we'd rather not do ourselves mostly. So it's a particular thing for me to actually be able to express that to the public.
Councillor Agar, thank you. And I think this council would agree. We're very fortunate to have you as our Armed Forces Champion. So thank you. Okay, that is just for noting. So if we move to agenda item 11, and that's report from the leader on any matters which they are of the opinion require urgent consideration by the council.
Well, somewhat unusually, I do have a matter for urgent consideration because a little bird's told me that this is actually Shane's last full council meeting, which is just an enormous shame, as we've already heard. I'm enormously grateful that he chose to come to Worcester and that we've had the privilege of his sensible and steady hand within the city, and the very rare skill of being able to make finance reports meaningful and understandable to councillors, and to explain the impact of decisions, the impact of any decision actually on the finances of the council. And he's helped track Worcester through some very difficult decisions over the years. He's manoeuvred us through some choppy political waters and changes. And in an era when virtually all local authorities are financially challenged, Worcester is no exception. And we continue to attempt to do more with less money. And Shane has made sure that the money does balance, and that the council has been able to do most of what we want, which is just incredible. I guess he's earned the right to retire after sitting through so many council meetings like this. He will be a very hard act to follow. I'm still hoping that, you know, we might look at a retire and rehire offer, whether that might be possible. He definitely needs to come back in order to cut the ribbon when the Arches project is fully open from Foregate Street down to the riverside, because he has shepherded that through, chaired the board, absolutely has put heart and soul into making that project happen, and it's a great legacy amongst many others of his time with us. So thank you for your public service to Worcester City. Wishing you a long and happy retirement, and enjoy your evenings at home with your wife.
Yes,
thank
in fact,
you.
I'm not retiring at all. I'm just going to work for my wife for the next 2 years. Just to say that I'll be in the Guildhall on Thursday, 31st of October. So if you want to come along for a cup of tea and a vegan sandwich.
Thank you. Councillor Denham, thank you, and Shane, thank you. Yeah, and obviously we all wish you well. And I think with no exempt issues, I can close the meeting, and thank you everyone. Thanks.